Should we go ahead? I want to say hi to Chris.
Shoot, I see Chris all over the place. Let me say hi. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Bruce. Hi, Corey. Hi, Richard. Hi, panelists. Hi, everybody else who hasn't said hi. It's good to virtually see everybody on a Friday afternoon. It is in the Sacramento area, our very first hot day of the year, which to me is super exciting. I love the hot weather.
Like a roller coaster, though, you know, it's going up, and
has
it's gonna
been.
go down, it's gonna go up next week. Okay, it looks like we're leveling out a little bit. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending today's truck regulatory implementation group focused on outreach. I'm just going to hand it over to Chris. I have a lot of background noise, but I just want to thank everyone for attending again. These meetings have been super useful, and we're going to give some updates today on kind of where we are on certain requests that we've had from the group, and looking forward to a good discussion. Chris, you want to talk about ACT Expo?
You bet. So usually we all have a chance to practice and figure out who's going to do what. And with holidays and people being gone for ACT Expo, we're a little bit rockier today on our handoff. So this year I was not able to attend ACT Expo. I certainly heard from lots of people and people who sent me pictures of themselves with different trucks and behind the wheel of different trucks. I am curious from our panel, those of you who did go, what did you see or hear, smell, taste, do that really stood out to you or surprised you in some way? And for those of you playing the home game, drop that in the chat. The thing that you saw, heard, felt, smelled, tasted that stood out to you from ACT Expo. Or if you weren't there, maybe the work truck show, or maybe even this awesome event that happened this week in Irwindale.
Why, thank you so much for the plug, Chris. You're amazing. Well, I will say that my feet still hurt a little bit from ACT Expo, but it gets more amazing every year. The biggest takeaway I think that I have, and I see Matt put his hand up, so I'll make this short. I've gone now the last three events, and every year the amount of hydrogen-based solutions expands. It was a third hydrogen, maybe even a little more, maybe a little less, but yeah, it's just amazing to watch the evolution of all of it over the years. Matt?
Thanks, Bruce, and I'm sorry I missed you there. It was quite a show, as you said. I think Cliff Gladstein had mentioned there was over 11,000 people, but not as many people as Anaheim, they'll be back there next year for us Southern Californians. Very convenient, to say the least. I think that, not necessarily trying to couch this in any negativity at all whatsoever, but there was a resounding message from very large fleets up there that the cost of operating zero-emission vehicles weren't necessarily as rosy as initially thought. And I think that it's just an opportunity to continue the dialogue in some of the challenges and deployment, and being, upfront and really recognizing the hurdles that fleets have to go through. I thought that was a message that rang through. I heard from a lot of our members who had either caught that via LinkedIn or through their own attendance. So, I think it's good that things are coming to light so we can try to take measures to address the challenges. One positive thing, I guess, is that we finally got to see the Tesla truck and some information on that. So, I got lots of members waiting for their trucks. Their deposits have been down since 2017, 2018. So we're looking forward to it. And if it truly performs how it does, I imagine it will be quite the game changer. So that was my takeaway initially. Besides, I miss seeing you, Bruce.
Thanks, Matt. And James, I see your hand up too.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I went to the expo also, and yeah, I was very impressed with there was a lot of people there doing the ride-in drives, a lot of manufacturers. I heard the term in a lot of the in a lot of the sit-ins that we were at. Um, there's no silver bullet. Several people said that. Um, and I agree. It's like they're almost there. I know for our fleet, we're looking for more range and more capacity. And the hydrogen vehicles may be the answer. Hopefully they can get there soon as well.
Yeah, I want to throw in one other thing, since I think the hands that are up are people that have spoken already. I had a very, very the opposite experience from what Matt did. I sat in on a few of the seminars, unfortunately not nearly as many as I wanted to, because I was working our booth, which, as you might all suspect, was very, very busy. But on the last day, I sat in on some of the main stage stuff, and there was one panel, very large corporation. They talked about it was all their logistics folks. They talked about what they were doing, and one of the comments they made was, certainly we're not seeing the TCO that we thought we would. However, I never saw anyone that said that present numbers. The next panel, and I forget who the fleets were, unfortunately was probably the panel of the week I wanted to see the most. I'm sitting in it, and a little emergency at work blew up, so I was texting people and not paying nearly enough attention. They're a little bit smaller fleets. I need to try and get the presentations, but two of the fleets that were on the panel, and it was a much more positive panel, presented the kind of numbers that they're seeing. And I remember some of the stuff from the last one. I took a picture of the large screen overhead. And the last fleet had both Class 8s and lighter, and I don't remember if they said what lighter was. And they said that they are already seeing a negative 7% decline in their operating costs for the Class 8s, and a negative 10% decline in their operating costs for the lighter vehicles, and that they expect within, I believe, was the next 3 years, to see a negative 30% in their operating cost for the Class 8s and a negative 40 for the lighter vehicle. So, I mean, yes, we hear a lot of folks talk about, the TCO doesn't seem to be working out. But again, typically when I hear that, I don't see a lot of numbers. I saw a presentation by the ZEV fleet manager for the city or county of San Diego not long ago. And they had some pretty interesting TCO numbers. And again, a lot of numbers they were throwing up on their slides and the charts. So I would say that we're maybe seeing a little bit of both. I don't think it's quite as negative as nobody's seeing the TCO pencil out. But that was really probably my second biggest observation from the show, after the fact that just the technology is amazing in its expansion.
Cecile, were you able to go to ACT this year?
Unfortunately, I didn't. Majority, I went to a battery conference, the EV battery conference. So a little bit more technical conference, but it's in connection to what we're doing. There's a lot of things that we don't know about yet, because as you transition your fleet from natural gas, diesel to electric, there's a change in how you're handling your trucks when they get into an accident. It's a different protocols that we have to handle, that all of us here need to take note of, and the data is not readily available. So those are the things that we have to consider. The towing of your truck, the safe transport of the battery cells. But we did send a big group to the Waste Expo, and that's the message I heard from my colleagues who went there, that there was a big discussion on using hydrogen for fuel cell trucks. We sent somebody from ACT Expo, one person, So that was the feedback, that now there is that interest now to use hydrogen, like fuel cell trucks. So
Excellent. Anybody else? I see, chat messages coming in too, which is great, with things that you saw and did or were there. I think it's really, Susan.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you all, and Anne Marie. Hope everybody's doing good in sunny California. We're finally getting some sun here in Illinois, which is nice. So hopefully you guys will send more sun our way because we need it. I know my garden does.
Susan, you were just a little quiet. You might need to speak a little louder.
Okay, gotcha. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. I didn't get to go to the Waste Expo, which is something that we go to every year because but my colleagues went, and I can confirm what Cecile said. There definitely is a lot of focus on hydrogen. There was a lot more from what I heard from my colleagues, there were a lot more EV trucks last year than this year. There was more of a focus on hydrogen, but I think throughout there's still the concern about whether there's going to be enough infrastructure and if it's going to happen quickly enough. To be able to, to meet the demand. I think that's, we see the technology evolving and that's exciting, the trucks, but the infrastructure continues to be an area of concern, I think, across the industry.
Thank you for that. Any other final thoughts about?
can I just add one thing on hydrogen? Also, there's something on your source for hydrogen. Some of the source for hydrogen fuel is fossil fuel. So how many percent is it renewable? Is it 30%, 100%? So that's another thing that we have to consider for hydrogen. So yeah.
One thing, like many of you, I've been doing this for a long time. And the job that I had before I came to work with Frontier, I've been here for 19 years, working mostly with fleets and trucks and hydrogen and batteries and natural gas and biodiesel and you name it. But before this, I worked at IBM and I did new technology introduction. And when I say new technology introduction, we're talking about the days of the PS2. When software didn't talk to each other and you had to choose between a 5 1/4 or a 3.5 inch floppy. So, it was a long time ago. And the one thing that I have learned from all of these jobs is to be really cautious about what we're considering to be data and results, because there have not been enough vehicles operating for long enough for this to be a reliable data pool. So I would say everything that you hear now about total cost of ownership or reliability, or these right now are more anecdotal than something that we can put a stake in the ground yet. And I think that's one of the important reasons that we're here and we're talking together, and we have this culmination of the folks that are building trucks and starting to deploy them in infrastructure, and you all who are using them, and then these regulations that are creating some certainty to the market, because we will soon get to the point where we have enough real world information to start drawing conclusions and doing some analysis and some forecasting. But it is a reason that we're here together.
Chris, to date myself too, I wonder if there's a lot of people out there that know what a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive was.
Or remember that you used to not be able to go to the store and buy a computer. You used to have to find your business partner who would build it for you. So it was really complicated to buy a computer back in the late 80s, early 90s, y'all. If you weren't there then. I just wanted, before we switch over to our we're going to talk today about the marketing program, and you heard at our last meeting that they teased that Melissa was joining this team, and she's going to lead us through that. I want to mention, participated in the Next Top to Zero event that CARB hosted in Irwindale this week, and it's one of many they've been doing. It's the first one that I've attended. It was really interesting and well done and great information, very interactive. What I found interesting is the range of people who attended. So we certainly did talk to fleet managers and business owners, There were folks there that were city managers. I talked to two people who were mechanics for their fleets. They were just a real range of people and a huge range of knowledge. Some folks were very well versed in advanced clean fleet and trucks in general, and for some, that was their very first exposure to ever having seen any of it before. And so,
thanks again for the plug, Chris. I just wanted to say too that I got some really good comments from folks afterwards. We have some really great panelists. The last comment I got from someone kind of typified the other comments, and that was that the information was just presented in, what we hear in this group all the time. It was straightforward. It was from the experts, whether they be fleets or OEMs or dealerships or, or service providers, whatever the case was. And that was our goal. Just here's the information. And so, again, thank you, Chris. And if anybody sees those in the future, we are doing 2 different types of events. We're also doing an event we call a one-stop. We had those ages ago. That'll cover a little bit of everything. It won't be quite the same style as what you saw, Chris. But we really are trying to get out there. I mean, we have been, and we want to more. So if you see the next stops come up, try and attend.
and I just have to tell you that I was sitting on an infrastructure panel, which is kind of weird because I'm not an infrastructure builder, but I was there with the infrastructure builders. And at the end of it, Ron from Forum Mobility explained in the most straightforward, simple manner the difference between kilowatts from a charger and kilowatt hours in your battery, and how you do the math to figure out how long it's going to take you to charge. And sitting there on the tape stage, looking at everybody in the audience, it was like all at once, everybody in the audience went, "Oh yeah!" It was. We sometimes take it for granted that we really are talking in weird terms and phrases. And so, with that, I want to turn it over to Melissa, who is going to take some of that information and tell us about the media campaign. So over to you, Melissa.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen first, and then I will introduce myself. Just want to make sure that this is all set up. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Melissa Muser, and I joined Compliance Assistance and Outreach about 2 months ago, working with Bruce and Anne Marie. I am new to heavy duty fleet work, but I am not new to CARB. I've been with CARB for about 20 years, and I've been working on the light duty side of zero emission vehicles, trying to advance the market there. And I have focused on outreach for essentially that entire time. And so now on the heavy duty side, I am outreach focused again. I'm leading the multimedia outreach campaign that I'll share with you in a minute. And I'm also working with other staff in our group on the websites, on events, and we're creating all different kinds of new tools to help fleets. Okay, so for the multimedia regulation campaign, this is really to raise awareness and make sure that fleets know how to comply with the requirements of 3 regulations: Advanced Clean Fleets, Clean Truck Check, and the Off-Road Regulation. We've selected Sagent as the contractor, and we're planning to start working with them in early June. They are a full-service marketing and communications firm, and they have expertise in large multimedia statewide campaigns. So today I'm going to take you through our proposed approach that is based on what has worked well in the past for other similar campaigns that CARB has done. But there's flexibility, and we really want to hear your ideas on how to best target fleets and what's important to say and how we should say it. So we'll use your input to inform our strategy as we go forward working with Sagent and our CARB teams. So Sagent has extensive experience reaching heavy-duty trucking audiences through paid media channels. They understand the audience and they have expertise in the tactics used to reach medium and heavy duty fleets. These are some of the relevant campaigns that they have done, and this includes Clean Truck Check, which is just wrapping up and is very similar to the new campaign that we'll be launching. And Clean Truck Check will be a part of that new campaign. So we'll continue with outreach for that regulation. Over the next 2 years, we'll be getting out the message through strategic media buys to reach the largest number of fleet owners and managers possible. Again, we're looking for your input. We want to maximize our reach and impact through this campaign in every way that we can. We will be doing all our messaging in English, Spanish, and Punjabi. Ads and web banners will be placed in trade publications. This includes general trucking industry magazines, truck fleet manager focused magazines, and off-road construction trade magazines. These are a few of the publications that we're focused on, and here also is an example of messaging that we've used in past campaigns. Outdoor advertisements will also be part of this campaign, including billboards and fuel pump toppers in high impact locations. We'll have billboards in strategic locations on highways and interstates throughout California with significant heavy duty truck traffic and construction and off-road work. Ads will also be placed on placards above fuel pumps that dispense non-gasoline fuels and are accessible to heavy duty trucks along highways, interstates, and byways with significant heavy duty diesel truck traffic in California and neighboring states near the borders. We'll secure radio spots and radio interviews on stations and programming popular with truck drivers, fleet managers, and equipment owners and operators of on-road and off-road vehicles. These are some of the stations and programming that we believe will reach those affected by these 3 regulations. They include road dog trucking and rural radio channels across entertainment programming most relevant to truck drivers and equipment operators. We'll also air spots as part of the Total Traffic and Weather Network that broadcasts traffic, news, and weather reports across California on local radio stations. And we can target markets through the Central Valley and Inland Empire. We'll also use the Radio Laser Network and Punjabi Radio USA and NAPTA to reach Spanish and Punjabi audiences. We'll also be using digital marketing tactics with unique targeting, including streaming video, paid social media, paid search, email, and LED truck signs. We'll target audience groups on Facebook and have paid search through Google AdWords, which we can geo-target. Here's an example of using ad load technologies for advertising on LED signs installed on the back of tractor trailers. These travel on major routes in California, and ads are geo-fenced to our target areas. We can set them so that they can be active 10 miles outside of California if we want. Paid email can also be a really effective way of targeting fleets and communicating detailed information to them. And we'll place targeted digital video on streaming platforms and programming, including YouTube, Amazon TV, and Facebook. We'll place media buys with cable networks in the markets shown here, targeting those in the trucking industry. And we'll focus on popular networks for transportation and materials movement audiences. We'll supplement with video on demand and streaming on Spectrum in LA and Chico and Comcast in Fresno and Sacramento. These may include using platforms such as Tubi TV, Zumo, Vizio, and Pluto. We're starting to think through messaging, and we have several goals in mind: that fleets are aware, that they understand that they are affected, and that they comply. We hope also that they'll begin to see the benefits of zero-emission vehicles, and that Californians in general understand that there are air quality and health benefits linked to these regulations. So I'll stop here because we want to hear from you on how we can best communicate advanced clean fleets to our audiences. And I'll put out a couple questions for discussion. Are we missing anything important in our media strategy? What messaging will work well with fleets? We only have a few words to get our message across in most cases. So what specifically will grab their attention? What do you think will motivate action? What is the right tone we should take? And what trigger words are understood and motivating? So I'm going to stop there and just open it up. I'll keep this slide up. If anyone has feedback for us, thoughts of any kind, that'd be great. And I will leave it to Chris. Do you want to call in people? Let's see if I can. I'm not sure I can see everybody raising their hands. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm sure. So,
Okay.
this looks really awesome. Thrilled to see it happen. I do have one thought, but before I do that, I want to see, I want to take ideas, comments from the rest of the working group. Brad.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for that presentation. I think this is good that we're trying to get a little bit more mainstream marketing and education out there. I think what I got from the presentation and maybe what we're missing is the folks that are in that medium duty category from the class 2Bs to the class 5s, really. There's just no solutions out there for them, so they're confused. I know that CARB has said that there's going to be a vehicle list out soon that's not there. I think a lot of at least my clients are saying, we don't see the vehicle list, so we don't know what to do. We understand we have to be compliant in order to file an exemption. Those kinds of things are all things that kind of come up way down the road when we start these conversations with clients, and trying to help them understand the regulation. I talked with a city in the Bay Area that we worked with a couple months ago, and they were unaware that they had to comply with ACF. And this is not a little city. It's it's not a major city, but it's not little either. So I don't know where we're missing the medium duty stuff. But I think that's just kind of lacking a little bit. But again, thank you for the presentation, and thanks for the time today.
Yeah, and I'd like to jump in on some stuff since I've done so much of this outreach. And, Brad, you're certainly right. I mean, so many people aren't aware of it. However, we have actually for years taken many, many steps to try and make people aware. This is another tool in our quiver. And we found we did this once when SB1 first took effect, and we found that it was a pretty effective one. I personally signed off on hundreds of thousands of mailers, postcards typically, to go out to every registered vehicle fleet. Now, part of that problem is we have to specifically look for state and local government fleets because, as you know, they're exempt plates, but we do that. We have a number of groups internally right now that are looking at different ways to even increase our outreach to state and local governments even more. And again, these types of things are the types of things that were in this presentation are now just another, and what in our experience, a very good tool to try and get that out. And things such as the aware of the vehicle and so forth. And by the way, I think the list you're talking about, just to address that quickly, is the list basically of exempt body types. And we're building that from the exemption requests that we're getting in now. We only had one for about the first 2 months of the year. So we're getting more and more data, and we're trying to build that list. But that's what the effort of this is. You said awareness. That's what the whole effort of this campaign is to create awareness, and then drive people to somewhere like Truck Stop. So that's exactly what this tries to do.
Bruce, can I stop you just for a second?
Absolutely.
Help me understand. Are you saying you've received one exemption from?
No, we've received more now. What I'm saying is, for about the first 2 months, we had only gotten one exemption request for quite some time. We have to build that list that you're talking about from those exemption requests. We're getting a lot more in now. I don't know the numbers on it. We're getting more in now. So as we evaluate those, we now are getting the data to start building that list up. As far as vehicles that are available, that information, and when I say are available, there's some that are available that aren't even on the list I'm about to mention, because this is through our HFIP funding website.
Yeah.
And unless those vehicles have applied for and qualified for HFIP funding status, they're not on the list. But there's something called the ZETI tool, zero emission truck inventory, I believe. If you go through our truck stop website, or if you look for HFIP's website, you can find that tool there. And that's the flip side of this not available list that we're looking at. That's the here's what is available list.
Yeah, I understand that. I think because the big hangup is I can't find a 3/4 1-ton upfittable pickup
Yep.
chassis in a zero emission. And so how do I handle that? There's no list that tells me that vehicle is exempt.
So, and again, that's what we're building. And I'll tell you, we certainly saw them at ACT Expo in a number of, and we are gathering data. We had one person there that was gathering some data from a number of the manufacturers. And the reason she was gathering it is really for this exemption list. So that when we get exemption requests in, if we see that there's actually something in production, of course, we're not going to say, well, this is coming, or it's a demo model or something that, that doesn't necessarily cut it as in production. But so, as I said, we are building that list as we're now getting more and more of those requests in and more data.
Great. Bruce, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And Bradley, I have a question. So, we've really been struggling with how to reach state and local governments, like Bruce mentioned, and we have met with the League of California Cities and other organizations like that. And the team is putting together a presentation for the California Association of Public Procurement Officials, which is a group we haven't worked with before. So that's pretty exciting. But if there are any opportunities or groups that you think we should be reaching out to, I mean, we tried to do as much as we could with our Spring into Action, which we could talk about later, but we were sending things out to the districts and to cities. But if there's another mechanism or some other group that you think we should talk to, or talking to your clients, like how do they get their information about regulations, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we've said, the members of this panel are of great value.
Yeah, Anne Marie, I sent you.
I don't want to get us too far afield from this topic. So before we jump into, because I just wrote a note about that myself, Bruce. Matt, I see your hand up too. Do you have comments about the marketing media campaign, the proposed message?
Yes, thanks, Chris, and sorry for the background noise. I had to switch to the car here. So just real quick on the government thing, the local councils of governments are also a great resource. I imagine board member De La Torre could probably get you guys in touch with some of them. Beyond that, I think that it is quite a impressive undertaking. I mean, clearly, you guys are no stranger to trying to get this outreach. I mean, the motivation for fleets boils down to typically regulatory compliance. And right now there's some uncertainty, unless you're a state and local fleet, as to whether or not what timelines rather the rule may take on due to the waiver issuance. And so it's difficult to couch general outreach to try to call people to action without having that hammer that's there to really motivate them. The one thing that does motivate people, in fact, is incentives or are incentives. So perhaps I missed it during the presentation. Maybe it was touched on, but I would think that, in addition to ACF, et cetera, that setting up resources to try to access, whether it's HFIP, if you qualify, or perhaps some of the other programs like VW, which may reopen here in South Coast, and I believe South Coast is looking at some programs to maybe work with the local districts also in doing some of this outreach to the fleets that they have within their purview. Could be helpful, but again, it's challenging because you don't have that hammer. But the other thing, of course, associations out there, not to sound self-serving, but we are, very close to the fleet owners ourselves, the California Trucking Association, West States, clean fleets. I mean, there's plenty out there that have that direct communication. And while billboards and Road Dog are great, I think, working with them and trying to send some outreach or doing joint webinars as you guys have in the past, that also helps to spread the word. And just last on your point, Chris, about, kind of that data being out there, and this really has to do with outreach also, is that the problem is that the waters are so muddied that it's hard to determine whether or not who's saying what is actually true. And Bruce, it'd be great if you could find out who that fleet was exactly who was saying that they were seeing those savings. And those are the type of things I think that are important to communicate. But I've never seen a TCO that works without incentives. So as we kind of move forward in trying to reach out to fleets to get them to this call to action, so to speak, and thinking proactively, I think the clean truck check is probably the top of the list for people, because that's something that is happening now. So I don't know if there's a prioritization of what rules are being communicated through the media buys, as opposed to just the shotgun approach of like, hey, you might be covered under 6 different rules. Maybe more surgical in thinking that motivating people clean truck check, because that does have more nationwide reach per se than the ACF does. So just some food for thought there.
No, and first, I would assume actually that fleet did get incentive funding. So you're right, that always, but this was really about their operating cost. So it was too new, and as Chris said, there's so few data points right now. So to look at the total TCO over time, but this was their operating cost, which was certainly I found to be pretty impressive. You mentioned like incentives. You'll notice that bottom billboard isn't actually from us, it's from CalSTART. They do a lot of that incentive outreach for us as well. You're right, that's also a true a true carrot for a lot of folks. As far as as the hammer, I mean, yes, we're waiting for a waiver, but that of course doesn't affect the state and local government fleets. They're under that now, so we really need to create that awareness with them. Things such as the COGS, we have an internal group that we in another division that we've worked with. They deal with a lot of the COGS. We've looked at that before, but I think we can work, especially through the air district, because the air district is usually part of, or often part of, that COG relationship, just like it is here in San Diego or in Sacramento or in the Bay Area. Maybe we can do more there to push that word out. Part of the challenge that we've had is getting the message to the right person. And I may have mentioned that before. The right person isn't always the fleet manager, right? I mean, he may know, and I've heard this from a lot of fleet managers. It's like, you need to tell my boss, you need to tell the county manager, the city manager. They're the ones with the purse strings. So it is all of these different tendrils that we have to try and put out there to reach people.
Copy that,
Chris.
Bruce. And I think, and sorry, Chris, one last point. I promise I'll stop talking for now. To that point, Bruce, absolutely, you need that right person. But when ARB has unimpeachable information that cannot be challenged, and when those fleet managers or even the government representatives who participate in the various COGs receive a call to action for the state and local government fleets, because as you said, they do have a requirement. And did you know that your purchases need to equal a certain percentage of total makeup relative to particular dates, and what type of equipment can you use? The exemption list is obviously probably top of mind for most of those folks. But either way, I think that, the more data that's out there, it's, the old lunch truck chatter, water cooler, cocktail hour, whatever it is. I think the more information that you guys get out there to those various groups, it's going to reach that point at some point in time. And, again, the challenges become incentives aren't available to everyone either.
Right.
But yet, at least if you start thinking about, hey, there may be incentives out there for me. Again, and CalSTART does great work. We work with them. We've put on several ride and drives with them over the past year and a half.
Right.
So, getting that information out there is critical, but having that data, getting it in their hands through those mediums. I mean, I'm glad that we're here right now, but man alive, like we're getting pretty close to these dates, and people need to start making those purchases now, as you know.
Right.
So I'd highly recommend leveraging that COG relationship sooner than later.
But
Bruce,
I want to get back to the messaging piece.
Bruce, can I jump in for just one quick second, please? For everybody who's listening, you do not have a raise hand button. So right now, only the committee members are able to raise their hand and say something. We'll have an open comment period at the end, and then you'll be able to raise your hand. So I'm sorry about that. I know that's confusing, but as you're thinking and you want to drop messages in your chat, we're reading those and we can see those as we go, but you'll see an opportunity to raise your hand near the end. And
Matt,
Bruce, then back to me because I want to say something about messaging too. Go ahead.
please, and that's what I wanted to get back to. Matt brought up a lot of great points, but as you see here, we have a limited amount of space. We have to get people to the right place. So with that, Chris, please, let's jump back into that messaging.
That's what I was going to say too. And Melissa, I would have to say, I think this is a really well thought out campaign with these layers, because we know that all advertising needs layers. Nobody hires a lawyer based upon a billboard. But what that billboard does is reinforce who that attorney is. And then when you do get ready for it, you start looking into it. So if we think about that billboard, those magazine ads, those other things as the thing that creates name recognition. What I heard from folks talking so far is the big thing that I think needs to grab the attention is to know if this regulation applies to you. And do you have to comply? Because that is really confusing, particularly for small operators that maybe only own 2 trucks that visit a port 3 times a year. Does that apply to them? The other thing that I want to mention is we heard early on during our meetings that quite a few people who are driving trucks are illiterate. And no words make sense to them, no matter what language you're writing them in. And so I would be very cautious about what images you're using, because on these 2 billboards, if I didn't know how to read, I don't know what either one of these is about.
I would be very cautious in using the term illiterate to describe a working class. You have to be proficient in English to pass the commercial driver's license test here in California, at least to be able to read signs and whatnot. So I would take exception to that comment, Chris. I understand what you're saying, but thank you.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Matt. And I may have bad information on that. So,
but still, that is the point, though, Chris. I think you hit it. Is it is a visual thing as much as a word thing. It's what is going to draw people in. What's the tone of the message? I mean, we have this top one, and actually, we're going to change that impact. That was something we did use in SB1, but probably something like effect, because we think that's a little better tone to strike. Maybe maybe there's a billboard or something that says you might need a zero emission truck. That's another thing that we struggle with a lot of times when we talk about trucks. And we were very careful in our last campaign to not just use pictures of Class 8 semis, because we need people to understand even more than ever, now not so much on Clean Truck Check, but even more than ever, that this is impacting lighter and lighter and lighter duty vehicles. So what are some messages, what are some tones, what are some words that you folks on the panel might have?
So can I just make a comment
Yes.
on this? You're relying on billboards, which is good, but remember, it's not your truck drivers who make the decisions to buy the trucks and comply with this. These are your corporate, the companies, the people in the offices, the agency. So the drivers do not make those decisions. So if you're just relying on the drivers to tell their bosses, that's sort of you're not going to capture everybody. Like, this is what the regulation is. There has to be like you have to target the people who are going to be buying the trucks, who are making those decisions,
Right.
to understand the regulations.
And we're not, Cecile. In fact, I know that we had put a list together of like fleet magazines, because as Melissa had mentioned in her presentation, there are a number of medias. This is just one because it kind of illustrates maybe the best point. I mean, a billboard's got to be super short, super concise. a radio ad. You maybe got a 15-second spot. That's not a lot of time. But absolutely, we're looking across the board. Matt mentioned the small fleet organizations. We've worked with them successfully in the past to get them to put articles in. So no, you are absolutely right. And other ideas that you folks might have. You know, I mentioned fleet magazines. What might be a good corporate magazine or whatever to get that word out?
I don't know. Cecile, what do you read? What magazines do you read?
So because for us, I mean, we track all the regulators. For us, we track CARB, we track South Coast AKMD because we are in the South Coast area. So we're a little bit more, we watch the regulations, but because I'm from a government entity, so we have to convince basically the city officials, the people approving the budget to let them know this is coming, this is why we need to comply, the cost of it. So I'm probably coming from a different group in that you have to reach out to city officials because I'm coming from a government entity. What we're noticing is our the haulers, the commercial haulers that we are hiring, they were not aware of ACF. So we had to educate them. And that's through when we are doing contract negotiations with them and informing them that this is going to be a requirement. You have a connection with us because even though you're a private entity, you're providing services to us. So you are required to do that compliance. You are required to comply with ACF. So we
What
are
are
also another source of information for them that this is coming.
So I was gonna call out both Devin and Kathy who are chatting in the chat about where did you learn about this? Devin said Devin, not sure Devin, I'm gonna use they. Learned about it late. Kathy said she learned about it early. I'm just curious to type in there or anybody else, Devin. Devin says she. Thank you, Devin. I get that I get a lot of that too. So the rest of you who are playing the at-home game, man, type in there, where did you first hear about advanced clean fleets? Not where you think other people heard about it, but where you first heard about it.
and we're
Susan,
getting some
over to
interesting
you.
things in chat. And I see Susan has her hand up too.
Susan.
I think I was just going to answer the question about where do we get information? You know, Transport Topics is a publication that we get information from, but there's been a host of them put in really active in the chat, some that I wasn't even aware of. So thanks to folks for adding additional information.
There are, and I just am looking at one right now, Devin. I love that. Some things, and I mean, I'm not going to ever say that we've thought of everything. We have used a lot of different resources, and we're getting some really interesting ones in on chat to supplement that. But I love some of the things you brought up. Fuel card providers. Yeah, great. That's a great idea. Never thought of that. You know, fleet management.
Jesus, there's a government fleet magazine?
Yeah,
Oh.
we actually I think have that on the list of possible magazines. I'm not sure if it's that one, but I think we have that on the list of possible magazines for
That is correct. And it's
yeah.
I think Bobbitt Media who does a lot of the
Oh, okay.
ride and drives.
Okay. Yeah, so many great suggestions.
Yeah.
So Bruce, Bruce and gang, I might also suggest where we talked a lot about ACT Expo and being at ACT Expo. There are a lot of folks that are operating those smaller vehicles that go to the work truck show. Did you guys go to work truck show too?
No.
We have been in the past. We haven't done that. Didn't know about that one. We have been in the past. There's a large landscaper show every year. We've been at that a number of times, which I say landscapers, you think lawnmowers, right? Which we actually have lawnmower rules too. But there's obviously a lot of folks looking for those 2B, 3, even 4 and 5 class 5 trucks. So that we've done, but no, I didn't know about that would be another great resource.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot more of the class 2B through 5 trucks at work truck show.
Do you know, do they hold one in California?
No, it travels around the country, and I think the last one was in Indiana, but tons of folks go no matter where they are. So
Okay, great. Ag show, love it. We went this year again. I missed it. We hadn't been in quite some time.
we were just talking about that yesterday. Yeah.
What's
So,
that? I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, we were just talking about it at the other event. Go
Oh,
to
we're,
the
oh yeah, I think
Ag
you're right.
show.
We were.
Yeah.
So,
Melissa, do you want to like
in-
emphasize any of these or try to get some discussion on the words?
I think what would be really helpful, this has been a great conversation, definitely where you get the information, because there's a lot of wiggle room in this as we start to plan with Sagent. But I think what will be really helpful is what's the right tone and what are the trigger words? Like if we have something up on a billboard, what kind of image and what kind of words will stop you and want you to read that? And I understand it's going to be important to get different size vehicles on these billboards so people know it applies to all different kinds of trucks. But any thoughts on that? I see Susan's hand is up.
Hey, Melissa, thanks for putting this together. I mean, I think it's really well done and really thought about a lot of different things and ways to get the message out. I guess my only question around here is I'm looking at the top one, for example, CARB rules impact truck and bus DMV registration. And then it says, don't put the brakes on your business. Does that mean that if you don't meet the requirement, you're not gonna be able to drive your truck?
That was an example, Susan, from our previous campaign where truck and bus regulation was going to be enforced through DMV registration.
Okay, is
So
this
that
going to be enforced through DMV as well?
no,
Clean
not
truck check is though.
yeah, yes, right. But for ACF,
Yeah, ACF is no.
which we're focused on, no, that's not. Maybe at some point down the road, but not. That's not how we're going to enforce this.
Now, if fleets are out
So-
of compliance, we do have, and we have done many times,
Yes,
we do have the ability to go to the DMV and request that they hold the registration. But with clean truck check and truck and bus, it's an automatic thing.
Mhm.
Gotcha. So you're not starting off with that, but
No,
it could
not
be.
for ACF. No, we're trying to get people to understand if they're affected by ACF.
Right.
Right now, we're really leaning toward just helping people to know that they might be affected and that they should really find out, and that there's reporting that's going to be required.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
not taking a heavy enforcement tone with it, although I don't think that it will be good if we take a really, really positive tone where people aren't motivated and they don't realize that, yes, you actually do need to look into this and see if you're affected.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of, the example up here, go zero, throwing in some of that, but I don't know that just ZEVs are great alone kind of a message will be super motivating, but would love to hear your thinking on that.
I lean towards more of the compliance piece, right? Are you meeting requirements, effective on this date, right? Is your truck compliant? Your new requirements are coming on this date. Go check at blah, blah, blah. It's more of action, right? Oriented.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I'm thinking. And you're doing the same thing here, but the quick few words, right?
Yes.
Is your truck compliant? And then including the variety of different trucks, because this one will imply that it's only the one, right? I thought that was a good suggestion, whoever made that.
Matt?
Just to echo Susan's point, I think that the problem becomes for motivating people to think about this is the fact that there is uncertainty about the waiver. So if we prioritize who the outreach goes to, it's state and local government fleets, but I think you can hook people in on the clean truck check, and that being a, I guess, catalyst for them to determine whether or not they're in compliance with ACF, because I feel like the compliance or, you know, flashing money in front of people's faces is what's going to be the most motivating factor. If I'm a guy and driving down 99 in the valley and I see a big billboard that says 0, I got other things to do. So just from that perspective, I don't think that we should completely discount the CTC compliance and the potential for DMV registration holds out of this outreach for ACF.
You know, I agree with Matt on this too. And the other thing is, we are not talking about compliance for your existing truck. What we are talking about is what you buy next. What are you buying, you know? So how does this communicate more like shopping for a new truck? The truck stops your first, and this is really bad, I know this. You know, so how
Always
do you
are at first, Chris.
communicate when you are shopping for a new truck, you are required to comply with this regulation? And that word comply for a lot of my, I see Melissa typed in here about very remote areas in North Carolina, Northern California. A lot of my clients are up there and the word comply is a trigger word for them, or compliance. So how do we say this without saying that word?
I like that. I think that's a good idea. Now, of course, with Clean Truck Check, it is about your existing trucks.
Right.
So yeah, the messages will be a little different, and then we will have messages that apply to both. But I kind of like that. You know, now we do have to be cautious about. I mean, with the state and local government, what you just said is true. Of course, the smaller ones don't really have to do anything for about 3 years. But then we also do have to be careful. You know, we get a lot of small owner operators that aren't port trucks or whatever the case that get really scared when they see that. So how do we say that so that we maybe, and maybe it is, you know, you got to get it. If you're looking for a new truck, look at an electric. I don't know.
Yeah, like time for a new truck, or, yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm interested to hear. We have a lot of our panelists that we haven't heard from today. Who's got an idea? Jay?
Okay, one thing that applies especially to our fleet and a lot of construction company fleets is we did have to register an additional 60 trucks into our fleet, right? Because it now includes 3/4 ton trucks, F-250 pickups or Chevy 2500s. Anyway, I think that should be a part of the message too, because people that have, you know, a large quantity of the 3/4 ton trucks, maybe they don't realize now you are a part of this rule.
So is that message something like, you know, again, I'll put it badly too, it needs to be refined, but, you know, carb rules impact lighter trucks. I mean, something like that, or not just semis or something.
Right,
Well,
right.
I-
The ACF rule now starts with 3/4 ton pickup trucks, not just the heavy trucks. And I agree in some way, but yeah, not that way. But the
Yeah, I
other
know
thing,
it always has to be refined, but the idea
yeah,
is the important thing.
the
Well,
other
some of
thing
the things,
that I've put out before, as far as being able to reach people, is getting the dealerships to know about it. Again, the people that are selling 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks, they don't know, and that's if they're aware of it, whoever is coming to buy those trucks that's placing an order for 5, 10, or 20 trucks, if the dealer's aware of it, and they, unfortunately, it may cost them a sale, but they might be helping their fleet by letting them know, hey, let's check, you know, are you registered? Do you need to be registered? Let's help you in the right way.
and yeah, I mean, we'll have a landing page where people can go to get more information. But you know, some of the messaging we've been playing around with is, you know, cleaner trucks required in California or something like that, which would maybe then we can talk about Clean Truck Check and we can talk about ACF, you know, kind of a broad, you know, catch-all phrase.
Right. And dealers, you're right, are really important. We need to start reaching out through more dealer associations. We've been looking at some of that, and they even want to know. I mean, they want to know about Clean Truck Check. They want to be able to they want to be a service to their client. Matt.
Oh, sorry, I didn't I didn't lower my hand, but I was thinking. I think I said this at the last meeting I attended. The California New Car Dealers Association has a truck dealers committee specifically chaired by medium heavy duty dealerships. They'd be a good resource to reach out to.
You did, I missed it. So that is a great resource.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Just seeing what people are typing in here and thinking about things too. It's kind of like, you know, are you part of the future? Are you ready for the future? I keep thinking about future, but then future sounds like way far off in the future, not like,
Yeah.
you gotta buy a new truck, you need to buy one of these. So.
Well, one thing that we're kind of playing around with is we know that we don't want to be too hard on our words, where it can feel really negative. And we want to weave in there the idea that, you know, this is a good thing for California and this is why. And so we've come up with like a tagline, cleaner fleets for a healthier California. And we're wanting to kind of weave that in all different kinds of places where we'd say, you know, this is what you're required to do. This is who's required to do it. But then this is why. And whether we've got that in a trade publication or we even dedicate a couple billboards that just has that message that this is good for California, these regulations, we think it's important to get that kind of why out there. So I'd love to hear, any thoughts on that.
Matt?
I think that's perfectly fine. Cleaner fleets for a healthier California. It's a good tagline, memorable. The only thing I just would say that, I don't know if you guys really need to worry about your public relations image. I think that folks are already kind of having a formed opinion about Air Resources Board, whether it's right or not. I think that there's not a such thing in people's mind as like a nicer, kinder, gentler ARB. So just from that, but I think the tagline is good, and at this point, I think it's worthwhile pursuing.
Yeah,
I agree with Matt. I like that tagline. I think it's a good one. I do think you're gonna need to add a little bit more at the bottom, right? What does it mean? These kinds of trucks are gonna be required by this time, or we'll need to meet blah, blah, blah. Whatever that might be. Because I think, it's a nice tagline for messaging, but it doesn't move to action.
Yeah. I can't see hands up. Is there anybody else?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay.
Melissa, do you see the messaging also being in stages? Is it more like the initial to be focused more on those benefits of, for cleaner air, and then later on focusing on compliance, or do you see one message kind of straight across over time?
I think one message over time, but I think after working with our contractors agent and talking with everyone else, there's flexibility there. But what we do know is we want to right off the bat, as quickly as possible, reach as many fleets as we can with you need to know if you need to comply with this kind of a message. So we're going to be going straight out there with, you need to report, find out if you're affected, and then wherever it makes sense in as many places as possible, try to get that why in there, because there are other people who are going to be seeing these billboards. And what we don't want is someone with just a regular F250, F150 that thinks that they need to now comply with regulations. So I think we need to just be cognizant that everybody is going to be driving by these billboards. And the more we can at least try to get the message of why out there is a good thing, but that's not the primary message.
Melissa, would it make sense to start with the step of report everything, and then we can tell you seems onerous, particularly to smaller businesses. Would there be a way to have something that would take them to a landing page and you can say, my vehicle is a this, click a box, I deliver things to a port, I don't, just do a couple of things and say, ACF applies to you. Click here to learn more and do more. Is there a way to get people in that's lower touch?
Yeah, so really in everything we're driving people to truck stop. And I can give an update on that, but I'll jump ahead a little, that we are working on flow charts. We have a small team that has a couple different potential flow charts. One is a answer the question kind of chart where, are you this kind of fleet? And it will take you through and let you know what regulations you may need to comply with. But we're also thinking of another additional, I wouldn't call it a flow chart, it's more of a filtering tool, and it would be initially focused just on advanced clean fleets. And that would be kind of a build your profile approach of here's who I am, these are the kinds of vehicles that I have, do you visit ports, do you not? And then we would provide just kind of high level information about, okay, here's what you need to do then. And here are your deadlines, and here's where you can go for more information specific to your situation. So we have a couple different things going on at the same time, but we know that that is a need. And when people do come to truck stop, that we're driving them there, we need to be able to very quickly answer their questions. So we're working on all of that at the same time.
Excellent. And James just put in the chat about using these tools at repair shops, like a leaflet to staple to paperwork. And that made me think of something that people do, drivers do, even big trucks, more often than go to the repair shop, is swap out their DEF fluid. I wonder if there's a way that we could put something on the dispensers where you swap out your DEF fluid. And that's a good question for Matt, because I don't know enough about them.
And before, is that at a repair shop, or really is it like, I mean, I know they do that at truck stops and so
yeah,
forth.
it's at a station. It's at the station by my house.
We will have pump toppers, at least on the diesel dispensing pumps. So that may be part of it, but I didn't want to cut off Matt, but I just wanted to address that really quickly. Hard locks, yeah.
Matt has his hand up.
Yeah, and I don't mean to usurp the conversation here. So, and I look forward to the feedback from the public. Of course, I just on the comment of like, you don't want the F-150 guy thinking that he's covered. And I appreciate the follow up with, we want to have clear resource in the truck stop. Like, does this apply to me? Flow chart, click through, whatever it is. But I almost think you want that person driving that F-150 to think about whether or not they're covered under these rules.
Yeah.
Because then it starts to spread amongst their friends and colleagues and family. And plus that more awareness about what heavy duty equipment operators need to do in California. But again, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it's difficult when we have this waiver issuance thing hanging over our heads, where there are folks who actually physically do need to comply. And that is, the state and local fleets, we talked about that. But again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but honestly, in my experience in dealing with fleets, that compliance thing is what drives people. And you engage at the mechanic shops and you engage everywhere else. It's like, hey, you need to register with Clean Truck Check on the one hand, if you're within this certain category. And again, it helps to kind of spread this messaging around. It's difficult because I know where this is about ACF, but I'm telling you, just the kind of scuttlebutt out there is a lot of confusion, and we don't want to confuse people necessarily. And it's not necessarily true that if they buy a new truck, they have to get a diesel truck or a non-ICE vehicle, so to speak. So yeah, just some food for thought. I think the more people that know about it, the better. And really leaning on the compliance side is going to be impactful to folks.
I know this messaging stuff sounds easy, but I think everybody sees it is quite complicated.
It is. I just have a question. Are you going to be using a database, source of data to target certain groups for compliance? Because you divided us into 3 groups for ACF compliance. You have part of drayage, priority fleets, and local and state. So the group for the priority and the federal, because of that waiver, they were not required, they were not mandated to submit their inventory report early this year. But local and state, we were required to submit it, and I believe drayage as well. So you have your 2 sets of group already that you have your data that you can send out either flyers, emails, whatever you have in place to direct the messaging to them, like what are your deadlines and everything. It's the priority fleet and the federal. I don't know if you have the data, you may have data from their registration. So that way for me, it's more like targeted approach. There's no one approach to campaigns. There's always, you have to take several approaches, but I wonder whether you're going to be using data to basically identify the people who are required to comply with ACF.
Yeah, well, I think we'll use all of what we have access to, and there, may be some internal reference points that we can look at, but we also will rely on Sagent to kind of steer us toward the data that they use to determine which are the best media to use. But we are going to be really targeted. So especially in, paid email, social media groups, just the type of streaming that people look at, there will be opportunities to be entity specific in our messaging, drayage, for instance. So we will be looking for those opportunities to be very targeted.
I want to make all the messaging even more confusing, possibly. I have to keep always pointing this out because the agency is very vehement on this. There is a regulation in place. We are not enforcing it. We are enforcing it, or at least we can enforce it right now on state and local government fleets because the waiver does not impact them. I think one thing that we would be hesitant to do is focus so much on one type of entity that we give the other entities the idea that there is nothing that they have to do. And there is all that confusion out there, right? It's like, okay, yes, indeed, we're waiting for a waiver. We've made it clear once that waiver comes through, or if it's determined we don't need it, and I know a lot of people are rolling the dice that it's just going to go away, but we don't want to leave those folks out and then have them come back to us, let's say 8 months from now, when we are enforcing it, and say, why didn't you tell us? So we need to be really cautious about not addressing everyone. Again, it makes the message a lot more confusing. I understand. Someone in the chat mentioned the confusion over the waiver and expectations. Absolutely. And, keep checking for daily updates. We'd love those daily updates. That doesn't exist. What what I know is what you guys know right now. It's a process with the federal government. They don't call us daily and go, oh, we're thinking about it, or oh, maybe tomorrow. So that makes things more complicated. We don't know where they're at in the process. So again, it's not easy.
So this has been a wonderful conversation, and we have a lot of great comments in the chat that we will be looking at very closely. Susan, did you have something else? Because we only have 15 or so more minutes in this meeting. So we have a couple things to cover, but I'm really glad. I mean, I wanted to let the conversation go because this is really important, and your feedback has been very, very valuable.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Anne Marie. I actually only had just one comment regarding the drivers. I just wanted to kind of share that I agree with Matt's comments on our drivers, that our drivers are actually very active in engaging customers directly, and they see the trucks as their trucks. So they will see things that impact their trucks and their vehicles, they will bring it back to us. They actually are the ones that engage with the customers making the deliveries and actually identify opportunities because they have those relationships. So our drivers are very important to us and how they engage, and they're very sharp, and they will see these things on this. So I wanted to just make sure you clarify that point.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa.
I'm going to do this really quickly. I already talked to you about the flow chart. So we've got a couple concepts there that we're working on. We also are looking at our website, knowing that we have to prepare it for lots of traffic. So we're going to be streamlining that and potentially rethinking our approach on truck stop and ZEV truck stop. And then we heard you at, I think it was the last meeting that this group had asked that we separate the events from the news on the ZEV truck stop website. So we've done that, and we're going to, but just keep in mind that generally we're going to be changing up the website in general, and that may, so this may change, but we have done this for now. So, okay, I am going to stop sharing now. Thank you, everybody. That was really helpful.
And we'll be sharing, we are working with CalStart on a ride and drive that will happen in August in the Bay Area region. So we will be certain to share all that information with you so that you can share with others, but it will be a big ride and drive, and there will be presentations on the whole ecosystem of, you know, getting into a ZEV. So looking forward to that. There will be another one down south, probably in October or so. And then we, as Bruce mentioned, will be hosting smaller events, which for those of you who are familiar with our one-stop events, they'll be a little bit different. We are having one in June, and I can't remember the date, but it'll be in Dublin at the Holiday Inn. And for those events, they will be about all the regulations. So we'll have presentations on all of the heavy-duty regulations and incentive programs and CalFleet Advisor, and then we'll have tables with the staff so that you can come talk to them individually for if you have, you know, specific fleet questions. So we'll have clean truck check there, TRU, ACF, a drayage, even though drayage is part of ACF, but it's a little bit different. So we'll have incentive staff there. So hopefully you can promote that too. If you haven't received the notice, we can send that out to this group too. So we'll be doing probably one every month until the end of the year. So the team will be very busy, but we'll be across the state. So you'll find all of those trainings and events on what Melissa just showed on the truck stop pages. You're on mute, Chris.
There's a question in the chat from Emily about how to coordinate with CARB if they want CARB to do some outreach to their customers and fleets. And I know previously we talked about there are only so many of you to go around. So how do you want folks to contact you if they would like to have CARB do a training?
Yeah, if you could contact me directly, we do have a new team. They are coming up to speed, but we may be able to have some staff, some existing staff out there. But there's also these events. So, you know, if one's in your area, maybe that's the best way to do it, is to send, you know, folks to the training that's closest to you. What else is on the agenda?
We have our talking points document and then the results of the spring into action messaging.
Yeah, so the talking points I did send just a few minutes ago to the TRIG panel. They're, you know, these talking points really come from different presentations or different fact sheets that we already have that's existing. And just a reminder that if there are any discrepancies, what's in the reg is the most important thing, and that is what we will rely on if there's any kind of discrepancy. It's what's in the reg that will supersede anything that's not consistent. So hopefully the TRIG panel can help us with more outreach, and now you have all of the speaking points that we use. And then the last thing was we did monitor the results of the spring into action, and I hope that You all shared it with, your association, your members, your clients. I wanted a little bit of feedback to see what you thought about the spring into action. But we did see increases to our web pages. And so we thought it was pretty successful, but I'm interested to hear from the panel, your thoughts on the campaign. Did it help? Was it not helpful?
Panel members who are not me, anybody have a comment? I shared it through my LinkedIn. I thought it was great. It was really helpful to just have a weekly reminder to send out to everybody to go to the page and see what's going on.
Should we be doing something different in the future? We don't want to send the same messages out, so we wouldn't, want to do the exact same thing, but maybe something similar when, especially as we have new tools.
Even taking some of the comments from today about focusing on the smaller vehicles, maybe we do something that is a month-long targeted to big pickups, little vans.
Big pickups, little vans. I like it.
Matt?
That would be a great children's book, actually. So, the only thing that I would have to say about it is consistency. Just keep up the messaging every single week, every few days, whether it's focused in on particular subsets of potentially covered entities, just that consistent messaging, consistent posting on social media, consistent outreach via emails or out to the associations is critical to just continue to hammer this home.
Thanks, Matt.
Other thoughts? Some of you have been unusually quiet today, and I wasn't going to call you out by name in case they're watching. So, y'all, I have to say, my son moved back in with me for a month and got me totally hooked on Below Decks, which I had never seen before. And now I'm watching it every spare minute. So I was going to say, maybe you're sitting there watching Below Decks on your phone during the week.
Maybe we need a reality show of ARB staff and stakeholders, we'll put us all in a boat and come out with a better version of the world.
Then we might make a lot of money and we'd all quit. And who would be, who would do this stuff?
Bruce, that's for money for outreach, for truck replacement.
Oh, man. All right.
Okay.
That's the answer, Melissa, is it's a reality show of a couple of truck drivers who don't really like each other, who have to drive across the country together in a zero emission truck.
I don't like that, actually.
It doesn't have enough tension and drama if they actually like each other. All
Maybe
right.
just trying to find charging infrastructure could be enough drama in and of itself. I'll stop.
Indeed. I won't disagree with you on that one on a cross country.
And then just our next one stop is June 11th at the Dublin Holiday Inn.
That's right. And that should be on our events page because that's a solid event.
Okay, Chris, so we just have 4 minutes. I'm not sure.
Do we have time for a couple of questions? Anybody got a burning need? If you I have really enjoyed everybody's participation in the chat, and I didn't realize that as you all were chatting, only we could see it. I didn't realize that other folks couldn't see it. There's a lot of suggestions about using DMV registrations. That is a little tricky. We've learned is that
very tricky.
very tricky, and not necessarily the person who is the holder of the DMV registration often has nothing at all to do with the truck itself. So there are a lot of tricky things about using the DMV regulation. Carb has tried it before.
We have tried many times, and the DMV, I'm not even sure would be supportive.
And same thing is a little tricky with utilities. Usually the company that the contact, because we do some work with utilities on this, the contact that they have is the accounting person who is sometimes in a different state. And so that's really tricky too, particularly if you're sending emails about something awesome to accounting@utility.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Well, and
this,
that's even what we have to do with DMV. We don't send to a person. We have to send to your truck owner or something like that, because it is not only tricky, but it's especially our cuts of the data are highly confidential, and we have to be cautious how we use it. See, Jesus?
I was just going to mention the Fleet Forward event on June 12th. I think, Bruce, you're going to be there, right, presenting.
Right.
So
That's
if
correct.
anyone's in the area, feel free to invite them to attend. It's a free event.
and Jesus, where is that? What part of the state?
It's in the port of Los Angeles, and it's by Fleet Forward, the tour. And I'll put the link on the chat.
Oh, thank you. And Jesus, could you put the link in the chat again, but change it, your two, to say everybody?
I think Brandon could probably do it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Jesus, did it.
Thank
He's
you.
a pro at Zoom. All right, Anne Marie, when is this TRIG meeting again? When is our next meeting?
I don't think we have a date yet, but sometime at the end of June, we'll, Yusuf will be back on Monday, and so we'll be polling the committee for some dates. But yeah, shooting for the end of June.
All right, well, with that, I think we will end exactly on time. And
Yes.
appreciate everybody's time and attention late on a Friday afternoon on our
Yes.
first hot weekend of the year.
Really, really appreciate all of the comments and the suggestions. I mean, the team and I are going to look through everything, see what, we can do, and we may have some follow-up for some of you, just, get more information on certain items. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who participated today.
Sure, just really quickly, what was it you wanted Brandon to put in the chat? I want to make sure I'm
No,
clear.
Jesus took care of it.
Oh, hey, that was what Jesus took it. Pardon. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all, and I just dropped my email in the chat, so if anybody has a funny joke they want to tell me or a question they want to ask me, fire away.
Or a below deck, like favorite moment.
Yeah, your favorite character on Below Decks. That'll be our next icebreaker.
That's right. Favorite reality show. Okay, great. Thanks.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.